For years, I mean, we've been out here for 5 years now, really trying to decipher what do I want to share?
Which you can't do legally, but you want to print it and paint a completely different picture of who I am and my relationship.
Amazing Tom Ford skirts and gorgeous shoes, and I mean, truly, what paralegal would ever have a wardrobe like this?
Look, I need you to pay attention to what I'm about to show you, because this whole thing, it started with one screenshot. Just one. A blurry image from 2016 that nobody thought twice about until it resurfaced years later and completely changed the game. Here's what's wild. It wasn't some leaked document or insider confession. It was a casual invitation. Hey, if you're free, come join. That's it. But when people saw who sent it, where it was for, and more importantly, who received it, the questions started flooding in. Because suddenly, that friendly little message became the missing piece connecting dots nobody was looking for. And once you see where this leads, there's no going back. If you're already hooked, hit that like button right now, because what's coming is going to make you rethink everything about how people actually climb to the top. Hit subscribe and turn on those notifications. We're breaking down every single detail that slipped through the cracks. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this because it goes way deeper than you'd think.
It all started with a joke. Just one offhand line from Colin Jost during Weekend Update on SNL.
So here's the thing, this screenshot wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some smoking gun with red circles and arrows pointing everywhere. It was boring, actually. Just a message from 2016 sitting in someone's old DMs. A guy named Adam Hound, nobody famous, nobody you'd recognize, sending what looked like a completely normal invitation. Hey, if you're free, come join Yacht Week in Croatia. That's literally it. No hidden meaning in the words themselves, no secret code, just a friendly invite to a summer party on the water.
So imagine this. You're Meghan Markle, waking up in your Montecito mansion, birds chirping, sunshine.
But get this, when that same image popped up years later, everything about it felt different. The context had shifted. People weren't looking at it like, oh, cute, she got invited to a party. They were looking at it like it meant something bigger. Something bigger like what exactly? That's where things get interesting. Because the message itself didn't change, but what people knew about Yacht Week culture. That had been exposed. The circles she was running in back then, those had been dissected. And suddenly, this harmless little screenshot became a timestamp.
So here's the thing. Every time you think the Meghan Markle circus can't get any messier, someone lobs another grenade.
A record showing she was there, in that world, moving through those spaces, way before anyone was paying attention to her. Now, word from people close to her camp is that nobody saw this coming. They'd spent years managing her image, carefully curating what the public knew about her Hollywood days. They thought they'd buried the noise. But this was different. It wasn't a tabloid making something up. It wasn't a rumor someone could deny. It was her name, a date, a location, and an invitation from someone who existed in that yacht circuit.
It was supposed to be just another late-night appearance. Laughs, promo chatter, maybe a few awkward...
And once it went viral, the question shifted hard. People stopped asking, where was she in 2016, and started asking, who was she back then? That's a completely different conversation. One that opens doors nobody wanted reopened. What makes this screenshot so powerful isn't what it shows. It's what it suggests. Because if she was getting casual invites to Yacht Week from people embedded in that scene, it means she wasn't just some actress who stumbled into elite circles later.
Meghan Markle has been dragged through headlines before, but nothing has set her off quite like this. A parody.
She was already circulating, already connected, already known, and that changes the entire narrative about how she went from Hollywood to royalty. It hints that there was groundwork being laid that the public never saw. All right, so if you're not familiar with what Yacht Week actually is, let me paint the picture for you. We're talking about the Adriatic coast in the summer of 2016, Croatia, Montenegro, these insanely gorgeous waters where luxury yachts line up like floating mansions. It's not just rich people on vacation. It's way more calculated than that.
It started with a smile, not a fake one, but the kind that feels practiced, polished, even weaponized.
These gatherings, they're basically networking events disguised as parties. Everyone there knows exactly what they're doing. Here's how it works. The guest lists aren't random, they're curated. You don't just show up because you can afford a yacht. You're there because someone vouched for you, because you bring something to the table. Connections, status, access to something valuable. It's an ecosystem where proximity equals opportunity. You meet the right person at the right party.
Have you ever seen that video?
No.
Pull that video up, because it's one of my favorite.
Many people doubt Meghan has long been a mother, following her attendance at
And suddenly doors open that weren't even visible before. That's the whole point. And listen, from the outside looking in, it looks like champagne and sunsets and Instagram-worthy moments. But the people who've been in those circles will tell you straight up, it's strategic. Every conversation matters. Every introduction is being calculated in real time. You're not just making friends, you're building a network that could change your entire trajectory. It's business. It just happens to look like a really good time. The wealthy sons, the executives, the people with actual power.
Meghan Markle has long been accused of carefully crafting her public image, but recent revelations have ignited fierce debates.
They're not there by accident either. They're shopping, looking for the right connections, the right partnerships, sometimes the right person to bring into their world. And the women moving through these spaces, a lot of them understood the assignment. This wasn't about partying, it was about positioning, about being seen by the right people, getting invited to the next event, climbing the ladder one yacht at a time. So when you hear that Meghan was part of this scene, it's not just gossip, it's context. Because Yacht Week in 2016 wasn't some random vacation spot she stumbled into.
Have you ever seen a single moment so tiny, so ordinary, and yet so explosive that it changes everything in front of?
It was a calculated environment where access meant everything. And if she was getting invites, that means someone thought she belonged there, that she had value in those circles. And trust me, that's not something you earn by accident. Now let's talk about how Meghan actually moved through these spaces, because this is where it gets really interesting. According to people who were in those same circles back then, she wasn't the loudest person in the room. She didn't need to be. Her approach was different, more subtle, more effective.
Today, Harry and Meghan torched what little was left of their relationship with the royal family and what little was left, frankly, of their own reputation.
She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person she was talking to, even in a crowded room. She remembered your name. She followed up. She asked the right questions and actually listened to the answers. Here's the thing about Hollywood, everyone's trying to climb. Everyone's hustling for the next role, the next connection, the next opportunity that's going to change everything. It's exhausting and competitive, and honestly, most people burn out because they don't know how to play the long game.
She's a real yacht girl, always fishing for fame. That's what Prince Andrew reportedly said about Meghan Markle, and now that...
But Meghan, she understood something that a lot of people miss. It's not about being the most talented person in the room, it's about being the most connected. It's about building bridges instead of burning them. People who've worked those same circuits will tell you. There's a difference between networking and being strategic. Networking is handing out business cards and hoping something sticks. Being strategic is knowing exactly who you need to meet, engineering that introduction naturally, and then making sure that person remembers you 6 months later.
For years, people believed Meghan came from the outside, but Soho House was proof that she was already standing at the door long
when an opportunity comes up. That's what separates people who stay stuck from people who actually move up. And from what insiders say, Meghan was really good at the second one. She wasn't manipulative about it, at least not in the villain kind of way. She was just smart. She knew that in a world where everyone's fighting for attention, the person who listens, who remembers details, who shows genuine interest. That's the person people want to help. That's the person who gets invited back. And in Hollywood, getting invited back is everything.
No one saw it coming. Not Meghan, not her team, not even the people who have built careers digging through her past. It's
because you never know which party, which dinner, which random Tuesday night conversation is going to lead to the thing that changes your life. So when she was at Yacht Week, at Soho House, at these exclusive events, she wasn't just there to be seen, she was there to build. Every handshake was an investment, every conversation was planting a seed. And yeah, some people might call that calculated, but honestly, that's just survival in those industries. You either figure out how to work a room or you get left behind. There's no middle ground. What's wild is how effective it was. Because years later, when she's stepping into royalty,
there's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels loud. It hums beneath.
People started tracing back all these connections she'd made. And it wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was the result of years of showing up, being memorable, and making sure the right people knew her name. That's not a fairy tale. That's a blueprint. Okay, so before we go any further, you need to understand what Soho House actually is. Because it's not just some fancy club you can walk into if you've got money. It's way more exclusive than that.
And once she crossed that threshold into royalty, her old world dissolved behind her, like footprints swallowed by tide. But
we're talking about a private, members-only space where the lighting's always dim, the music's always just right, and the people inside, they're the kind that can literally change your life with one introduction. Producers who greenlight movies, aristocrats with centuries-old last names, politicians making backroom deals, all sitting at the same bar. That's the world we're talking about. And here's what's interesting. Meghan wasn't some guest who got invited once or twice.
Not be there if it wasn't for her treatment of him. I guarantee it. And so,
she was a regular. Her name was on the membership list. She knew the staff. She had her spots. According to people familiar with that scene, she moved through Soho House like she belonged there. Because honestly, she did. She'd earned her place in those circles way before the public knew who she was. This wasn't some actress trying to break in. This was someone who'd already broken in and was working the room. Now get this, Soho House isn't just one location. It's a network. London, New York, LA, all these cities where power players overlap.
Recently, a scandalous story has emerged that has captured public attention, revealing the modern dynamics of royal.
And the thing about being a member is that you're not just getting access to a nice lounge. You're getting access to everyone else who's a member. It's like this invisible web of connections that spans continents. You meet someone at the London location, run into them again in LA, and suddenly you're not strangers anymore. You're part of the same world. What people didn't realize back then is that the entertainment industry and high society, they're not as separate as you'd think. They mix constantly, especially in spaces like Soho House. The same producers funding films are having drinks with people connected to old money families.
Breaking news today. It began like any other chaotic day on the internet. Celebrities trending for reasons no one could explain.
The same social circles that include Hollywood stars also include people with titles and estates. It's all one ecosystem, and if you know how to navigate it, you can move between worlds pretty seamlessly. So, when the official story came out that Meghan met Harry through a blind date, a lot of people who knew that scene raised their eyebrows. Not because it couldn't be true, but because the idea that she was some total outsider to that world, that didn't add up. She'd been circulating in the exact spaces where entertainment meets aristocracy for years.
The clip hit the internet like a thunderclap. Meghan Markle, hand in hand with a mysterious
She knew people who knew people. The introductions had already happened just quietly, in private settings that don't make it into tabloid stories. Listen, I'm not saying the blind date didn't happen. I'm saying the setup for that blind date probably had more history behind it than anyone wants to admit. Because in those circles, nothing's really random. Every introduction has context. Every chance meeting usually has someone behind the scenes who made it happen. And when you're a regular at the same clubs where royalty and Hollywood overlap,
It all started with a joke. Just one offhand line from Colin Jost during Weekend Update on SNL. All that
blind date in 2016, they hit it off. Whirlwind romance, engagement, wedding. Clean, simple. The kind of story people love. But when you start digging into where she was and who she was around in the years before that blind date, the timeline starts feeling a lot more complicated. Here's what we know. Throughout 2015 and 2016, Meghan was showing up at some pretty specific places. Mediterranean gatherings during the summer, charity events in Monaco where you can't just buy a ticket, you have to be invited.
You want more, I'll give you more. I was close to death this morning, but then I just took my first shower.
Private clubs in London that operate on referrals only. These aren't random spots. These are the exact places where wealthy Europeans, entertainment industry people, and yes, people connected to royal circles all tend to overlap. And she wasn't just passing through, she was part of the circuit. Now, the thing about these kinds of social scenes is that they're small, way smaller than you'd think. The same 200 or 300 people keep showing up at the same events, the same clubs, the same parties.
It was supposed to be an elegant evening of honoring women in media, but
across different cities. So if you're moving through those spaces regularly, you're going to cross paths with the same crowd over and over. You start recognizing faces. Names get mentioned. Someone introduces you to someone else. It's not dramatic. It's just how those worlds work. So when the story broke that Meghan met Harry in 2016, and it was this total surprise, this unexpected connection that nobody saw coming, people who'd been in those circles had questions.
It started with a smirk. Colin Jost, live on Saturday Night Live, looked dead into the camera and dropped a line that set off a fire.
Because the overlap was already there, the social proximity was already happening. It's not like she was living in a completely different universe and then suddenly got dropped into royal adjacent spaces. She'd been floating around the edges of that world for a while. What makes this interesting isn't that she was at these places. Lots of people were. What makes it interesting is how the public narrative positioned her as this total outsider who just happened to meet a prince.
I have a Meghan Markle blind item for everyone. Now, I'm not going to get into what the blind item says because
when really, if you map out where she was spending her time and who was in those same spaces, the connection starts looking less like lightning striking and more like two people who were already orbiting the same sun finally getting introduced. And listen, I'm not saying there was some grand conspiracy or master plan, but I am saying that the we met randomly story gets a lot more complicated when you realize how much social overlap already existed.
Tom Bauer just tore Meghan Markle's image to pieces. From yacht girl whispers to shocking royal
The guest lists at Monaco charity events, those include people connected to European royalty. The private clubs in London she was frequenting, those are where aristocrats and entertainment people mix. The yacht scenes in the Mediterranean, same crowd, different location. So the question isn't really whether she knew Harry before the official story says she did. The question is, how many mutual connections already existed before they were ever in the same room? Because in those circles, nobody really meets cold.
Every year on July 3rd and 4th, NT Lawyer reveals a bunch of blind items, and I'm covering the best ones. And this is...
There's always someone who knows someone. There's always context. And when you're a regular at the same places where royalty-adjacent people spend their time, eventually those introductions happen. They just happen quietly, over dinners and private events that don't make headlines. What this all points to is that the bridge between Hollywood actress and royal girlfriend wasn't nearly as long as the public thinks it was. The gap was smaller, the worlds were closer, and Meghan had been walking that bridge step by step long before anyone was paying attention.
Okay.
What else? You have lots of burning questions.
I have lots of burning questions. What have you learned about yourself since becoming Sussex?
Okay, so let's pull all of this together because when you look at everything we've covered, the screenshot, the yacht circuit, the strategic networking, Soho House, the timeline overlaps, a pattern starts to emerge. And it's not the pattern that the official story wants you to see. The narrative that's been sold to the public is pretty much girl from California becomes actress, randomly meets prince, falls in love, becomes royal. It's simple, it's romantic, and honestly, it's probably not the full picture.
She complained about pantyhose. Pantyhose is very...
What we're actually looking at is years of careful positioning. Not in some scheming villain way, but in the way that anyone who's trying to climb in elite circles has to operate. You don't just wake up one day and end up at a royal wedding. That's not how these worlds work. You build relationships slowly. You show up at the right places consistently. You make yourself known to the right people. You become part of the ecosystem before you ever make the big move. And from everything we can see, that's exactly what happened here.
Their relationship goes beyond friendship. In a recently circulated video, Meghan is seen at a luxurious...
Think about it like this. Every single piece we've talked about is a dot. The yacht invitation, that's a dot. Her Soho House membership, another dot. The Monaco charity events, dot. The London private clubs, dot. Her ability to work a room and build lasting connections, that's a whole cluster of dots. And when you start connecting them, you don't get a straight line. You get a web. A network of overlapping circles that all led to the same place. Now here's what's wild about all of this. None of these things are suspicious on their own.
In a moment that sent shockwaves across social media, broadcaster Dan Wooten aired what he claimed to be a long...
Going to a yacht party, normal. Being a member at Soho House, totally fine. Attending charity events in Monaco, cool. Meeting people and networking, that's literally what you're supposed to do in Hollywood. But when you put them all together and realize they all happened in the exact spaces where her future world was already operating, that's when the story shifts from coincidence to strategy. And look, I'm not here to judge whether that's good or bad. Honestly, it's kind of impressive.
In a moment that quickly grabbed attention online, comedian and Saturday Night Live star Colin Jost left...
Most people don't have the foresight or the discipline to play the long game like that. They get impatient, they make moves too early, they burn bridges trying to climb too fast. But if the pattern we're seeing is accurate, Meghan understood something crucial. Access isn't given, it's built. One introduction at a time, one event at a time, one relationship at a time. What makes this whole thing so fascinating is how invisible it was while it was happening. Nobody was writing articles about her attending these events.
Crazy. In a 2010 episode of the show Castle, Meghan played a crime victim who was dressed as...
Nobody was tracking her movements through these social circles. She wasn't famous enough for anyone to care. So she could build this entire network, make all these connections, position herself in all the right places, and nobody outside those circles even knew it was happening. That's the advantage of operating below the radar. By the time people started paying attention, the groundwork was already done. So when that screenshot from 2016 resurfaced,
That's all I know, that samurais used to do floral arranging and calligraphy to help with their focus and their...
It wasn't just one random image. It was a crack in the facade, a glimpse into a whole world of connections that had been carefully kept out of the public eye. And once people saw that crack, they started looking for more. And guess what? They found more. Because when you spend years building a network like this, eventually something's gonna surface. A photo here, an invitation there, a name that connects to another name. It's like pulling one thread and realizing there's a whole tapestry behind it. The biggest takeaway here isn't that Meghan did anything wrong, it's that
she's happy to go up the hill, but she hates going down the hill.
We don't have that much farther to go.
What?
the story we've been told is incomplete. It's the highlight reel without the behind-the-scenes footage. And the behind-the-scenes footage, that's where all the interesting stuff actually happened. That's where the real work was done. The dinners, the introductions, the carefully maintained relationships, the strategic decisions about where to be and who to know. That's the story nobody talks about, because it's not as romantic as love at first sight, but it's probably a lot closer to the truth.
Kind of polite studio laughter you get when a host fumbles through a script, but that guttural, honest roar that only happens when a pressure...
So here's where we end up. One screenshot from 2016, one casual invitation to Yacht Week in Croatia. That's all it took to unravel years of carefully constructed narrative. Because once that image surfaced, people started asking questions. And those questions led to more discoveries. The yacht circuit, the Soho House connections, the overlapping social circles, the timeline that didn't quite match the fairy tale version we'd all been sold. What this whole story really shows us is something
view look like a fairy tale bedtime story. Now, here's where it gets wild. This isn't just some bitter ex-friend.
Bigger than just one person's journey. It's about how power and access actually work in the real world. It's not luck. It's not destiny. It's not some magical moment where everything just falls into place. It's strategic. It's calculated. It's years of showing up in the right places, knowing the right people, and building a network so quietly that by the time anyone notices, you're already exactly where you wanted to be. And honestly, there's something almost brilliant about it. Most people who try to climb these kinds of social ladders make it obvious.
Polished manicured finger straight at Meghan Markle, and the story she's telling? Wild. Word is from inside those prisons.
They're loud about it. They brag, they burn out. But the people who actually make it to the top, they do it differently. They understand that the real game is played in private clubs and quiet introductions, in remembering names and following up 6 months later, in being part of the circuit long before anyone's paying attention. The question this whole thing leaves us with isn't really about Meghan specifically. It's about how many other stories we've been told that follow this same pattern. How many overnight success narratives are actually the result
material, others are yacht party material. The crowd exploded, not a nervous laugh.
Of years of invisible groundwork? How many chance encounters were engineered through mutual connections nobody talks about? How many fairy tales are actually just really well-executed strategies that we only find out about when someone digs deep enough? Because here's the thing, that screenshot wasn't supposed to surface. Those yacht connections weren't supposed to be mapped out. The Soho House timeline wasn't supposed to overlap with the royal introduction. All of that was meant to stay buried. Part of the before that nobody talks about once you've made it to the after.
Over a parody, the timing couldn't be worse. Meghan has spent the last few years carefully positioning herself as a...
But it didn't stay buried. And now we're left looking at a completely different story than the one we were given. So, what does it all mean? It means that when someone tells you their success was pure luck, or destiny, or just being in the right place at the right time, you should probably ask what they were doing for the 5 years before that right place and right time happened. Because chances are there's a whole network of connections, strategic moves, and carefully built relationships that nobody's mentioning.
Whether they will ever get divorced.
You know, I think as she told it, she approached me.
Given her appearance, Noelle does share some...
And maybe that's not scandalous. Maybe that's just how the game is actually played. The real story here isn't about exposing anyone. It's about understanding that the path from point A to point B is never as straight as it looks from the outside. There are always side roads, always connections that don't make it into the official version, always a web of relationships that makes the final outcome look a lot less surprising once you can actually see it. And that screenshot from 2016,
the couple has pursued high-profile media deals, Netflix documentaries, bombshell interviews, and branded appearances that have...
it's still sitting there on the internet looking as harmless as it did the day it was sent. Just a friendly invitation to a party on a yacht. Except now we know it was never just that. It was a breadcrumb. One small piece of a much bigger picture that shows us exactly how someone goes from Hollywood actress to royal in a way that has nothing to do with glass slippers and everything to do with knowing which doors to knock on and when. If you made it this far, drop a comment and let me know what you think. Did this change how you see the whole story? And if you want more breakdowns like this, hit subscribe because we're just getting started. I'll catch you in the next one.